Keanu leans back in the soft gray chair, half smile on his face, lights of New York glittering behind him like a second sky. He thinks it's just another late-night interview, another round of jokes and stories. But somewhere under his calm, a quiet storm is already forming, waiting for the one moment that will break through his practiced composure. Jimmy is laughing, the audience is clapping, and everything looks perfectly normal on the outside. Yet hidden between the cards on Jimmy's desk, inside the walls of the studio and deep in Keanu's memory, are small pieces of a story that none of them have told on television before. A story about a promise, a stranger, and a night that changed who he decided to be. Part 1, The Quiet Promise. The show taping hasn't started yet. The band is warming up, the crew is moving like a well-rehearsed dance, and Keanu sits alone in his dressing room, tie loosened, fingers absently tracing the rim of a paper coffee cup. On the mirror in front of him, someone from wardrobe has stuck a small yellow note. "You're loved here." It makes him smile, but it also pulls at something old and heavy inside his chest. He glances at the clock on the wall and hears the faint echo of another clock, 25 years earlier, in a hospital room that smelled of antiseptic and fear. He remembers the green light above the door, the thin beep of a monitor, and the way his younger self kept staring at the second hand, as if he could bargain with time just by watching it hard enough. Back then, he wasn't on a talk show couch. He was standing beside a hospital bed, holding the hand of a boy he barely knew. The boy's name was Alex, 19, too thin, with eyes that were somehow both terrified and wildly alive. They had met because a studio intern had slipped Keanu a handwritten letter after a premiere, cheeks red with nervousness. "He's a big fan," the intern had whispered. "He watches your movies when the pain gets bad. He doesn't have long. Could you just call him, maybe?" Keanu hadn't even finished the letter before he said yes. A phone call turned into a visit. One visit turned into several. And over those quiet, fluorescent nights, the actor and the kid with the tired smile had built a strange, gentle friendship in the shadow of machines. In the dressing room, Keanu pulls out an old silver chain from under his shirt. It's almost invisible on camera, always has been. On the chain hangs a tiny, worn metal guitar pick with a faded engraving. "Be kind no matter how dark." Alex had given it to him on one of those hospital nights when the world felt too heavy to carry. "If I go before you," Alex had said, his voice breaking but joking anyway, "promise me you'll keep doing that thing you do, not just the movies, the you thing. The stopping for people thing, the helping. I know you don't think anyone notices, but some of us really, really do. Promise me you won't stop, even when it hurts." Keanu had swallowed hard, fighting the stubborn burn in his throat, and nodded. "I promise," he'd whispered, meaning it more than he'd ever meant anything. A week later, Alex was gone. The guitar pick became heavier than any award he would ever hold. On the other side of the wall, Jimmy is practicing his monologue, the familiar rhythm of jokes and punchlines rolling out. But Keanu can't quite tune out the memory. Over the years, he's kept that promise like a quiet religion, paying college tuitions in secret, visiting sets early to learn every crew member's name, slipping out of premieres to help a tourist find a subway stop, giving up his seat on a packed train without wanting anyone to notice. The world turned those moments into viral clips and headlines, like the one on the cue card waiting on Jimmy's desk tonight. But for Keanu, each act traces back to that small hospital room and a boy who asked him to keep his heart open, no matter how many times it broke. There is, however, one part of that story he has never told publicly. Not to journalists, not to fans, not even to some of his closest friends. It's the part where, on the night Alex died, something happened outside the hospital that changed the way Keanu looked at himself, and at the people who cheered for him on screens. A moment when his own courage failed, when kindness didn't come as easily, when he almost walked away. A soft knock at the dressing room door pulls him back. A production assistant pokes her head in, smiling. "We're ready for you, sir. 5 minutes." Keanu stands, smooths his jacket, and slips the guitar pick back beneath his shirt, as if hiding a secret inside his heartbeat. As he follows the assistant down the corridor toward the bright stage, he has no idea that Jimmy and his team have been working for weeks on a surprise segment. A segment that digs straight into the very promise he spent years trying to honor quietly. The band music grows louder. The crowd's cheering becomes a living, breathing thing, and Keanu steps into the edge of the spotlight, blinking against the sudden brightness. For a split second, he thinks of Alex, of the last words they shared, of a cold winter night outside the hospital doors that he's never had the courage to revisit. What Keanu doesn't know, what no one has told him, is that tonight, live on national television, the past he has carefully protected is about to walk right back into the room in a way he never imagined, and force him to confront the one moment of that promise he has never forgiven himself for. Snow was falling sideways that night, sharp and restless, carried by an angry winter wind that cut through Keanu's coat like it wasn't even there. The hospital's glass doors slid shut behind him with a hiss, sealing in the sterile light and leaving him alone on the sidewalk under a flickering street lamp. He just spent 4 hours at Alex's bedside, 4 hours of bad jokes, movie quotes, and a quiet conversation that never quite admitted how close the end was. Inside, machines had hummed and beeped. Outside, the city exhaled into the dark. Keanu shoved his hands deep into his pockets, head bowed, trying to steady his breathing. This was supposed to get easier with time, he'd told himself. You visit sick kids, you hold their hands, you leave, you move on. But the human heart isn't built for routine when it comes to pain. Every goodbye felt like a new cut. Every see you soon felt like a lie he wasn't strong enough to correct. Tonight, the weight of that truth pressed down harder than usual. Just as he started toward the parking lot, a voice called out from the shadows. Hey, Keanu, is that you?" 2 figures stepped into the halo of the street lamp. A teenage girl in an oversized hoodie and a man in his mid-30s clutching a worn camera bag. Their faces were bright, excited, the kind of expression he'd seen 1,000 times at premieres, red carpets, airports. But here, in front of this building, after the night he'd just had, it hit him wrong, like laughter at a funeral. The man hurried closer. "I'm sorry, I know it's late. I'm a freelance photographer. My daughter's a huge fan. Could we get a quick picture? It would mean the world to her." The girl bobbed her head, eyes wide, shivering in the cold. Keanu's body moved before his mind did. His hand went up automatically in a small wave, the old familiar politeness trying to surface. But something inside him snapped tight. Grief, exhaustion, the thick ache of knowing that upstairs, a kid he cared about might not live to see the sun. Not now, he thought, anger surprising him with its heat. Not here, not in front of this place. He stopped walking, jaw stiff, fingers curling into fists inside his pockets. I'm sorry," he said, voice low and rougher than usual. "Not tonight." He could see the confusion ripple across their faces, the way the girl's hopeful smile faltered. The photographer hesitated, then tried again, softer this time. "I get it, man, I really do. Just one shot, 2 seconds. I've been waiting out here for hours." Keanu looked past them, at the hospital windows glowing pale yellow against the dark sky. Somewhere behind one of those panes of glass lay Alex, his breathing shallow, his mother dozing awkwardly in a hard plastic chair. A part of Keanu wanted to turn back, to go inside again, to hold that hand a little longer. Another part just wanted to disappear into the night, into the anonymity of the city, away from the burden of being Keanu Reeves, when all he felt like was a tired, frightened human being who didn't want his face in a flash. "I really can't," he said, more sharply than he meant to. "I'm leaving." Then he did something he almost never did. He walked past them without a smile, without an apology, without the softness people expected from him. He didn't turn back when he heard the girl's small, disappointed "oh." He didn't answer when the man muttered something under his breath that sounded a lot like, "Guess he's not as nice as they say." By the time he reached his car, guilt was already blooming hot and bitter in his chest. He'd been kind all night to a boy who was dying, and suddenly he couldn't bear to be kind for 10 more seconds to 2 strangers who were only guilty of loving his work. He sat behind the wheel for a long time, forehead resting against the steering wheel, snow collecting slowly along the windshield. "Be kind, no matter how dark," the guitar pick against his skin seemed to whisper. He had failed the very words he wore. He thought about going back, about apologizing, about offering that picture after all. But when he stepped out of the car, the sidewalk was empty. No girl, no photographer, just footprints already blurring under the falling snow. The chance was gone, swallowed by the night. The moment haunted him in a way he couldn't explain. Not because of his image, not because of what people might say on the internet, but because for a few seconds, when someone asked for a small piece of his light, he had chosen to hold it back. Years passed, movies came and went. The internet filled with clips of nice Keanu doing quiet good deeds, but buried under every compliment was a single bruised memory of a cold sidewalk and two disappointed faces. He told almost no one about it, not because it was a scandal, but because it hurt his own idea of who he was trying to be. It became the one crack in the promise he'd made to Alex. When things were darkest, his kindness had faltered. Back in the present, under the blazing studio lights, Keanu sits across from Jimmy, the crowd applauding as his name is announced. He smiles, waves, hugs Jimmy, the practiced rhythm slipping into place. They share a quick joke about his latest action movie, the audience laughing on cue. The cameras circle like patient birds, capturing every grin. To anyone watching at home, it looks effortless. Jimmy shuffles his blue cue cards and leans in, eyes bright with the mischievous energy that always precedes a surprise. "So," he says, drawing out the word, "we've heard a lot of stories about you being one of the kindest guys in Hollywood, and I know you don't like talking about it, but we did a little digging." The audience reacts with a knowing "ooh," expecting another lighthearted segment, another round of wholesome anecdotes. Keanu shifts in his seat, that old shyness creeping in. "Ah, come on, man," he protests softly, laughing. "We're here to talk about the movie." Jimmy grins wider. We will, but first, there's someone here tonight who has a story about you that you've never heard, and I think it might surprise you." The band hits a short, suspenseful riff. A screen behind them flickers to life, showing a blurred still image, a hospital at night, snow falling under a street lamp. Keanu's smile tightens almost imperceptibly. The image is too familiar. His fingers clamp around the arm of his chair before he can stop them. Jimmy turns toward the camera. "Ladies and gentlemen, joining us from backstage, someone connected to one of the quietest promises Keanu ever made." For a heartbeat, the studio is silent, every eye on the curtains at stage left. Keanu feels his chest constrict, a strange mix of dread and curiosity rising fast. He has spent decades keeping certain memories in the dark, especially that winter night and the promise tied to it. As the curtain begins to part and a silhouette steps into the edge of the light, Keanu's heart stumbles. Because the figure is not unfamiliar. In fact, it looks alarmingly like a ghost from a past he never thought would find him again. The studio lights catch the outline first. A woman's figure, early 30s, shoulders a little tense, fingers twisting nervously at the hem of her jacket. As she steps fully into the light, the crowd starts to clap, then slows, sensing something different in the air. She isn't a celebrity. She isn't part of a comedy bit. She looks like someone who took a deep breath in the hallway, then walked onto this stage carrying years of unsaid words. Keanu's eyes narrow as he studies her face. At first, it's just a feeling, a tug of familiarity. Then she gives a small, hesitant smile, and he's yanked backward in time so hard it almost hurts. The hospital sidewalk, the freezing wind, a teenage girl in an oversized hoodie, eyes wide with hope. This woman's eyes are the same, only older now, layered with everything life has poured into them since that night. Jimmy watches Keanu's reaction closely and softens his tone. "Keanu," he says, "this is Emily." The name lands like a soft knock on a locked door. The audience waits, curious, sensing the shift from late-night fun to something rower. "Years ago, she and her dad met you outside a hospital on a snowy night. We found her because she wrote us a letter about what happened afterward." Emily's hands tremble slightly as she takes the spare chair that's been set between Jimmy's desk and Keanu's seat. The band has gone quiet. The usual buzz of the crew fades into the background. For a moment, all Keanu can hear is the uneven rhythm of his own breathing. He remembers her now, the disappointment, the confusion in her teenage face as he walked past without stopping. The memory feels like a stone lodged in his ribcage. I remember you," Keanu says suddenly, his voice low, already thick with emotion. The audience gasps softly. They hadn't expected him to say that. Emily looks up, eyes shining. "You do?" Her voice is softer than it was in his memory, but there's the same earnestness, the same fragile courage. "I wasn't sure, it was so long ago." He nods, the corners of his mouth pulling into a sad, apologetic smile. "Outside the hospital, you were cold. Your dad had a camera." The guilt that has shadowed him for years steps forward, full color, right there on national television. I walked past you. I've thought about that night a lot." Jimmy gently interjects. "Emily, in your letter, you said that night changed a lot for you. Would you mind sharing a bit of that story?" He leans back, giving her space. It doesn't feel like a talk show anymore. It feels like a confession booth wired to millions of living rooms. Emily laughs nervously, wiping at the corner of one eye. Yeah, okay. She looks at Keanu like she wants to reassure him before she even starts. You know, when my dad saw you go into the hospital that night, he was so excited. He was like, this is your chance. We'll ask for a picture when he comes out. It'll make your year. I was 16. Your posters were on my wall. I knew all your lines from your movies, so we waited for hours in the snow. Keanu's shoulders sag just a little. He folds his hands in his lap, listening, every muscle taut. He could stop her, joke it away, steer the conversation somewhere safer. But he doesn't. He stays still because he knows he owes this moment its full weight. When you came out, Emily continues, I could tell something was wrong even from across the street. You looked really tired, really sad, but I was 16 and stubborn, and my dad was like, go, this is it. So we asked. And when you said no, my heart just dropped. She gives a small, rueful smile. It wasn't even what you said, really. It was just how fast you walked away. I thought, wow, maybe he's nothing like I imagined. Maybe people are just pretending he's kind. Laughter ripples weakly through the crowd, but it quickly dies when they see Keanu's expression. Eyes dark, jaw clenched, hands now gripping the edge of his chair. I'm sorry, he says quietly, cutting in without meaning to. I was coming from... He stops, swallowing hard. The studio is so still you could hear a microphone cable shift on the floor. Emily shakes her head. Wait, let me finish, because that's not the end of it. She takes a deeper breath, finding a center inside herself. We went home that night. I cried. My dad was mad. He said things he didn't really mean, like these actors, they're all the same. But the next morning, the hospital called. Keanu's heart lurches. The hospital. His mind races back to Alex, to the beeping machines, to the final time he saw that faint smile. His knuckles whiten. My little brother was in that same hospital, Emily says, and the audience inhales sharply. Not on your floor, different wing. He'd been fighting leukemia for months. That's why we were there in the first place. We had gone outside for air. When we saw you go in, it felt like a sign, I don't know, like something good might happen. Her voice cracks. She pauses, collecting herself. Jimmy's eyes glisten behind the desk. The call was from a nurse, she goes on. She said my brother had had a rough night, that someone had visited the kids' ward just quietly, no cameras, reading them stories, sitting with them. Said this guy had spent an hour with my brother, asking him about his favorite comics, his dreams, his fears. My brother was glowing when we got there, even though he was so weak. He told me, you won't believe it, Neo came to see me. She laughs through a tear, shrugging. To him, you were always Neo. The audience begins to connect the dots. A murmur passes through the crowd like an emotional current. Keanu blinks rapidly, his hand instinctively reaching for the hidden guitar pick under his shirt. Alex, the kid's wing, that same night, that same building. His throat tightens until words become difficult. I asked my brother if you were nice, Emily continues softly. And he looked at me like I'd said the dumbest thing in the world. He said, he was tired, you could tell, but he still made us laugh. He stayed longer than he had to. And then he said something I'll never forget. He said, you know how I can tell someone's a hero, not from punching bad guys, from how they act when no one's watching. A few people in the audience wipe their eyes. Jimmy's hand covers his mouth, his usual quips abandoned. The cameras zoom in on Keanu, whose eyes are shining now, lashes wet. His voice is barely a whisper. Your brother, what was his name? Lucas, she says. He was 12. The way she says makes the word feel like a small, breaking branch. He didn't make it to the next summer. Silence falls again, heavier this time, respectful. But before he died, he told me that night was one of the best of his life, that you made him feel like he wasn't just a sick kid, he was a person you actually wanted to know. And that stuck with me even when I was still angry about the photo. I kept thinking, how can someone be cruel to me and kind to him on the same night? Keanu flinches at the word cruel, but he doesn't look away. So, Emily says, voice steadying, I did something weird for a 16-year-old. I tried to see you as a person, not as the poster on my wall. I thought, maybe something awful happened that night. Maybe he was saying no to me because he was saying yes to something I didn't understand. And the older I got, the more I realized how many times I judged people on their worst 10 seconds without knowing what the rest of their day looked like. She turns fully toward Keanu now, not the cameras. You walking past me that night, that hurt, but it also cracked something open in me. It made me look for the story behind people's behavior. It's literally why I became a social worker. I work with teenagers who act tough and rude and impossible, but I always ask, what did your night look like before this moment? And I swear that habit started because of you. The crowd breaks into uncertain, emotional applause, but it quickly fades when they see Keanu's shoulders shake slightly. He's looking down, one hand covering his mouth, the other pressed flat over his chest where the guitar pick rests. His eyes glisten, his composure hanging by a fragile thread. Jimmy's voice is gentle. Keanu, you told our producers there's one moment you've always regretted. Was it this? Keanu lifts his head slowly. His voice, when it comes, is raw, edges frayed. Yes, he admits. I've done a lot of good things that people somehow found out about, and that's nice, but that night outside the hospital, I've carried that with me. I thought I'd broken a promise to a friend. I thought I'd failed to be what I'm supposed to be, especially when life feels dark. He looks at Emily, regret laid bare. I am so sorry for how I made you feel. You didn't deserve that. Emily's eyes fill, but she smiles, shaking her head. I didn't come here for an apology. She glances at Jimmy, then back to Keanu. I came here because there's one more part of the story you do know, something Lucas made me promise to tell you if I ever got the chance. The studio seems to lean in as one organism. Even the cameras adjust, inching closer as if trying not to disturb the tension. Keanu's brows pull together, his heartbeat roars in his ears. Lucas, a promise, another one he never knew about. Emily reaches into her pocket and pulls out something small and metallic, closed in her fist. The way she cradles it is almost reverent. My brother wrote you a letter the week before he died, she says softly. He begged me to try and get it to you. I never could. I was too young, too scared. I kept it all these years. When I saw all those videos of you helping people, I realized you never stopped trying to be kind, even on your bad days, and I thought maybe it's finally time to give this to you. She opens her hand, and what rests on her palm makes Keanu's breath catch. It's a folded, yellowed envelope, edges worn from being handled too often. On the front, in messy 12-year-old handwriting, is his name. Inside, he can see the corner of something else, a familiar shape, a tiny glint of metal that sends a shock through his chest because it looks so much like the guitar pick against his skin, but different. The audience is silent, caught in the spell of the moment. Keanu stares at the envelope like it's a doorway to a room he locked long ago. His hands, usually so steady in choreographed fight scenes, tremble as he reaches out to take it. As his fingers graze the paper, his vision blurs for a second, and somewhere in the back of his mind, he hears Alex's voice, overlapping with the echo of a 12-year-old boy he barely remembers meeting. Promise me you'll keep doing that thing you do, no matter how dark. The envelope is in his hands now, heavier than it should be. His heart hammers against his ribs because he knows that whatever is written inside has the power to either deepen his guilt forever, or finally, after all these years, set something free he's been holding prisoner in his own chest. The envelope feels fragile and solid at the same time, like a piece of time that forgot to keep moving. Keanu turns it over in his hands, the rough edge brushing against his fingers, his name written in a boy's careful, uneven letters. For a long moment, he just stares at it, the studio disappearing into a distant blur. It's only him, the letter, and all the years that have stacked themselves between now and that winter. Jimmy speaks gently, breaking the hush. If you're comfortable, you don't have to read it out loud. You can take your time. His voice carries the rare softness of a man who understands that something sacred is happening on his stage. Keanu nods slowly, swallowing hard. No, he says, his voice husky but certain. I think if Lucas wanted me to have this and you brought me here, I should share it with everyone. It doesn't belong just to me anymore. His fingers slip carefully under the flap, tearing it open with almost painful delicacy, as if he's afraid of hurting the words inside. From the envelope, he pulls out two things, a folded sheet of lined notebook paper and a small metal object that clinks softly against his palm. For a second, the sight of it steals his breath. It's a guitar pick, worn, scratched, but clearly cherished. Not silver like Alex S., but bronze with a tiny lightning bolt etched down the center. A faint engraving on one side catches the light. Real heroes are tired sometimes. The studio monitors zoom in as he holds it up, the cameras capturing the tremor in his fingers. The audience gasps, then falls utterly silent again. Keanu closes his hand around the pick and then unfolds the letter with his other hand. The paper shakes faintly, but his voice, when he starts to read, is clear enough to carry through the entire room. "Dear Keanu," he begins, eyes flickering over the uneven lines. "If you're reading this, it means my sister actually found you. She's braver than me." The corner of Keanu's mouth lifts in a broken half-smile. Emily laughs softly, wiping away another tear. He continues, "I just wanted to say thank you for coming to the hospital. I know you're busy and important, and you probably had a lot of cooler things to do than hang out with a bunch of sick kids. But you sat down and asked me about my favorite superheroes, and you listened like you really cared. That made me feel like I wasn't just a patient. I was a person. That meant more than you know." Keanu's voice wavers just slightly, but he keeps going. "You told me that in your movies you do all your own stunts when you can because you want the fights to feel real. I thought that was awesome. But here's the thing." He pauses, breath catching as his eyes move to the next line. "I don't think your coolest stunts are in your movies. I think your coolest stunt is that you keep being kind even when you look really, really tired." The words hit him like a wave. His eyes shine brighter now, moisture gathering along the lower lid. He blinks, a tear escaping and trailing down his cheek, but he doesn't stop reading. "Sometimes," the letter goes on, "the nurses here are grumpy. Sometimes my mom cries in the bathroom so I won't see. Sometimes my sister pretends she's not scared, but I can tell she is. I used to get mad at them for it. I thought, if they really loved me, they'd be strong all the time. But after I met you, I realized something. Even heroes get tired. Even nice people have bad moments. It doesn't mean they stop loving you." His voice breaks completely on that line. The audience's eyes blur in unison. Some clutch tissues, others cover their mouths. Jimmy looks down at his desk, swallowing hard, fighting his own tears. The crew members at the edge of the stage wipe their faces, forgetting for a moment that they're at work. Keanu takes a breath, steadying himself, the guitar pick pressing into his palm like an anchor. He continues, softer now, almost a whisper. "So if one day I see you and you don't have time for a picture or an autograph, I promise I won't be mad. I'll just think, he must be tired from doing his real hero stuff. Because I saw what you're like when no one is watching. And that's the part I believe is the real you." He pauses, blinking away tears, then reads the final paragraph. "I don't know if I'm going to get better. The doctors don't say much anymore. But if I don't, that's okay. I just wanted you to know that you made me feel braver. And if you ever feel like you messed up or weren't kind enough or didn't smile enough that day, I want you to remember this. One good night can erase 100 bad moments in someone's memory. To me, you'll always be the guy who showed up when you didn't have to. That's my definition of a hero. Love, Lucas." By the time he finishes, Keanu's cheeks are wet. He doesn't bother to hide it. He folds the letter carefully, almost reverently, and presses it to his chest for a moment. The crowd bursts into applause, but it isn't the usual loud, celebratory kind. It's slower, heavier, full of gratitude and something like awe. People stand up without thinking, the kind of standing ovation that isn't about a performance, but about witnessing something deeply human. Jimmy gives them a few moments before speaking. His voice is rough around the edges. I don't think I've ever seen anything like this on this stage," he says quietly. "Keanu, hearing that, feeling all of this, what's going through your mind right now?" Keanu exhales, a shaky, disbelieving laugh escaping his lips. He looks from the letter to Emily, then out at the audience, at the cameras, at the sea of faces he can't really see but can somehow feel. "I've spent a lot of years trying to be better than my worst moments," he says slowly. "We all have those, right? The times we wish we could go back and choose differently. For me, that night outside the hospital was a ghost I couldn't shake. I thought I'd hurt two people who were already hurting." He turns to Emily, his eyes soft but intense. "I never knew about Lucas's letter or this guitar pick." He holds up the bronze pick, the light catching the words, "Real heroes are tired sometimes." "I've been carrying my own pick for years from another kid I visited with a message about kindness. I thought I'd broken the promise I made to him just by walking past you." He gives a watery grin. "Turns out, maybe the promise was bigger than one bad night." Emily nods, tears spilling freely now. "I spent years being angry at you for 10 seconds, she admits. But then I realized the night that hurt me also gave my brother one of the happiest memories of his life. People are complicated. You were hurting too. I had to learn to hold both truths at once, that you're human and that you still changed our lives." The words settle over the studio like a benediction. Keanu leans back for a moment, running a hand through his hair, overwhelmed but strangely lighter. You know, he says, voice soft but steady, we live in a world where everyone sees everything. One bad clip, one rude moment, and suddenly that's who you are forever. But listening to Lucas, to you, I'm realizing something I think we all need to hear. He looks straight into the main camera now, speaking not just to the crowd in front of him, but to the millions who will watch later on screens big and small. His tone is intimate, almost like a late-night confession between friends. We are all more than our worst 10 seconds, he says. The security guard who snaps at you, the barista who forgets your order, the celebrity who walks past you without a smile. You don't know what hospital they just came from. You don't know what promise they're trying to keep, or what loss they're carrying quietly. He glances at Emily again, gratitude etched into every line of his face. Sometimes, the kindest thing we can do for each other is to leave space for the story we can't see. To believe that, behind that one bad moment, there might be 1,000 good ones we just weren't there to witness. The audience murmurs in quiet agreement. Jimmy nods slowly, his usual comedic energy replaced by something tender. That's beautiful, man, he says, and I think we all needed to hear it. Emily smiles through her tears. Lucas used to say, people are like movies, you don't judge them by one scene. She laughs softly. He would be losing his mind right now, knowing you're holding his letter. Keanu laughs too, the sound shaking but genuine. I'm honored, he says, clutching the letter and the pick. And I'm forgiven, I guess. The last words are half joke, half plea. Emily wipes her cheeks and nods firmly. You were forgiven a long time ago, she says. You just didn't know it. Something inside him finally lets go. His shoulders drop, the old guilt dissolving under the warmth of acceptance. The tears that follow aren't heavy anymore, they're light, relieved, almost joyful. He laughs as he wipes them away with the back of his hand, shaking his head in disbelief. I came here to promote an action movie, he says, chuckling. Didn't expect therapy on national television. The audience laughs with him, the tension releasing into a softer, shared joy. Jimmy leans forward, seizing the moment with a gentle smile. Well, before we go to break, he says, is there anything you want to say to Lucas? To kids like him, like Alex, to the people out there who maybe feel like they've messed up too badly to be good again. Keanu takes a breath, looks down at the two guitar picks now resting side by side in his palm, silver and bronze, two small tokens from two boys whose lives intersected with his in the quiet corners of the world. When he speaks, it's slow, deliberate, the words carrying the weight of lived experience. To Lucas, he says, voice thick but sure, thank you for seeing the best in a stranger on one of your hardest nights, for reminding me that tired doesn't mean unkind. You gave me back a piece of myself I thought I'd lost. I'll carry you with me just like I carry Alex, always. He looks back at the camera. And to anyone watching who thinks one bad moment erased all the good in you, it didn't. Keep showing up. Keep trying. Apologize when you can, forgive yourself when you can't change the past, and remember, someone out there might be holding on to the one time you were kind, like it's their favorite scene in the whole movie of their life. The room is quiet, moved in a way that no scripted segment could have manufactured. This is raw, imperfect, and profoundly real, the exact opposite of viral polish, and somehow much more powerful. Jimmy stands, stepping around the desk. He places a gentle hand on Keanu's shoulder, then turns to Emily. Thank you for trusting us with this, he says. With your brother's story, with your heart. The audience erupts into applause again, some cheering through their tears. As the band eases into a soft, emotional riff, Keanu stands too. He turns to Emily and without hesitation pulls her into a hug. It's not for the cameras. You can see it in the way his shoulders curve protectively, in the way her hands clutch the back of his jacket. It's a hug between two people who have finally put a ghost to rest. In that embrace, under the hot glare of studio lights and the cool glow of a million screens, something invisible but unmistakable happens. Shame is replaced with grace, regret with understanding, and a long-held ache with a quiet, freeing peace. When they finally pull apart, Keanu wipes his face again, laughing at himself. I promised myself I wouldn't cry, he mutters good-naturedly. Emily grins, eyes still bright. Lucas would have loved that you did, she says. He always said real heroes aren't afraid to cry. The camera slowly pulls back, capturing the three of them, Jimmy, Emily, and Keanu, framed against the glittering New York skyline on the backdrop. The studio's applause swells one last time, echoing through the room like a heartbeat. It's not just for the actor or the host or even for Lucas. It's for everyone who has ever carried a secret regret, everyone who has ever hoped to be seen as more than their worst moment. As the show cuts to commercial, Keanu slips both guitar picks back into his pocket, his hand resting over them with a quiet, almost reverent smile. He walks off stage a little lighter than he walked on, the promise to keep choosing kindness no longer a burden he bears alone, but a shared understanding between him and the world watching. And somewhere, in the unseen spaces where memory and love live on, a 12-year-old boy and a 19-year-old kid in a hospital bed are smiling too, proud that the man they believed in finally believes in himself that way as well.